Travelling on that train up from the south of France and crying my head off because I, in a sense, left my boyfriend to travel on my own. And I remember arriving in Paris and being quite bewildered by just standing in the middle of the big station, and then suddenly this man came up to me, a young man, and just kissed me. And it was like, this romantic moment but with someone I didn't know. So I don't know why I would have thought it was romantic, but I did. And he said, "Come with me to Spain." And I went, I'll think about it. Let's go and have a cup of coffee first. Anyway, so we went to have a cup of coffee, but it became quite apparent that he just was looking for somebody to fund his trips. So I decided that I wasn't going to go on the trip to Spain with that fellow.
But yeah, look, Brendan, when you travel for so long, I'm 35 years have been on the road traveling to country to country, and I never lived only 2 weeks there or 1 week there. I lived 6 months in one place. I went to the other a year. I lived 4 months in another country, and so I wanted to stay there with the people, and I made lots of friends.
I think I went to Sri Lanka after about 25 years after I'd been in Australia. I've been here for about 40 years now. So it's been a long time. So we went to Sri Lanka as a family, my 2 young children and my husband. And that was the first time I'd been, and it was really lovely. And I've been back a couple of times since. Yeah, I do like going there.
Marijuana I liked, especially in Laos. They had opium dens in Laos, officially. Then, till the communists took over, the Pathet Lao took over. And yeah, the opium dens. Every Thursday I went to the opium den in Vientiane, in Laos. And the woman who ran the opium den, she was from Vietnam. She owned the thing. It's really nice. It's very quiet. It's little things. You lie there, and the woman who owned it, she prepares the opium pipe. It's a long pipe like this, and she prepares the pipe. You ever seen opium in the raw? It's a sort of very dark brown, and you put it into the opium pipe in the hole. And then Simone was her name. Simone was, yeah, it's good. She gives you the pipe, you have one talk. And then she puts a little stone in a dish, one talk. Then she makes another pipe for you. She puts another stone. That's how you pay. I had about 12 to 15 stones. Every Thursday with my mates, I went. Simone, the owner of the woman, she smoked 120 a day, opium. But Cambodia was the most interesting one for sort of excitement, and there was a lot of, at night there was 6 o'clock, nobody on the street. You can't be on the street anymore. It was, and at 6 in the morning, we could go out on the street again. So it had to be inside all the time, because the Khmer Rouge, they sent bombs in. They bombed the city, a lot of things. And in the morning, there were all these holes in the city, and people had to fill it up. And then the day was normal. People went out shopping, to work, and everything. They didn't want to kill the people. They just wanted to take over the capital, Phnom Penh. Yeah. Yeah, and I was in the hotel there. Well, lots of sort of really crazy things. in the hotel I stayed on the bottom was a restaurant, and I was eating there something that was run by a Chinese guy. And one day a guy came in, pulled a hand grenade, put it in the restaurant, and a woman died from the explosion. And because the guys came in the restaurant, they had no food. Nothing comes into Cambodia while this war was on. The people were hungry, so they went to come into the restaurant to begging for food, and that's where this happened. I was sitting in the restaurant when this happened. So it's always good to sit in the entrance, right? To come in there in the restaurant, and you sit right there, because the people who attacked the restaurant, they put stuff to the bar and to where the food is. I was safe in there, and things like that. Yeah, that's from the hotel I photographed. They all took over, and then they gave the woman rifles, man. It was quite amazing. Look at that. Quite amazing. Look at that. That's when the Khmer Rouge, that's the communists who took over Cambodia. And when they took over, I knew a lot of these girls before when I was living there, and now they become in the army. Look at that. That's when they marched in the actual takeover. That time when they took over, it was big. That's one of the soldiers. There's me, actually there. That's the biggest weapon they had. They put bombs in there and they pressed the button and sprayed the city at night. That was the day when they took over the capital city. That's all the communists there. And look at me here. They always thought I was a CIA person. That's what they thought. I see the bombs. They bombed. There's a bridge. They bombed that. They had to build this. You go across the river. They're journalists from all over the world. The journalists who reported. That's some of the local thing. You know, they took over a village when they came closer and closer to the capital city. You joined them. If not, they killed you. They killed him. They killed him straight away.
So I went up to Cairns and I did my midwifery there. And I guess the other defining moment, while I was there, I noticed the plight of the Indigenous and Thursday Islander women who came in to have their babies with very limited opportunities in life. So I left and went to Adelaide, but I said before I left, if a job ever comes up at Yarrabah, I'd like to come back and work there. And it was a year later, I got a phone call from the matron at Cairns Hospital to say there was a job at Yarrabah. So Yarrabah's, it was an Aboriginal mission, but by the time I went there, it was an Aboriginal community. It had been taken over by the state government. And it's about 40 kilometres out of Cairns in a beautiful rainforest. Has a beach, Back Beach. And while I thought the job I was going to was for a public health nurse, which is what I was really interested in, the research, public health side. When I got there, I discovered that Yarrabah had a hospital, and that hospital had 2 nurses. You work 10 days and you have 4 off, and you're basically a doctor. You have a phone line to Cairns Base Hospital. You can ring the residents and get information, help over the phone if it's not the wet season and the lines aren't washed out. And there's a doctor who visits about once every 3 weeks. So the rest of the time you have a hospital with patients and you look after our patients. So that in itself is in the middle of the rainforest. So I remember cassowaries sticking their head in the hospital window and scaring the daylights out of me. You had to live on site. You had to live there for the 10 days, and then you had your 4 off. It was extraordinarily, there were, I think, 1,500 Indigenous people and about 500 public servants. The other public servants, teachers and the public health staff and the mission staff and police all leave every weekend. The people who were actually left there on the weekend were hospital nurses. So it was incredibly violent. There was a lot of domestic, every type of violence you could think of. People were wretched. Had a man who shot half his face off. It was, for such an idyllic situation, it was, unfortunately, they put a wet canteen, so a pub, on the mission when they turned it into a Aboriginal community. And that was probably the undoing of a lot of people. Nonetheless, it was there were successes, and it was challenging and interesting, and certainly as a young nurse I learned a lot very quickly. You had your own pharmacy, you taught yourself to suture, you had patients in hospital with a variety of illnesses. You had an ambulance, and you had what they call an ambulance driver who was a member of the community, who you hoped was in good enough condition to drive you into Cairns when you needed to go into. I remember driving down the mountains, driving over the great big rock pythons for the first time, thinking we'd hit a tree. It was, even though I'd lived in Cairns, I hadn't seen cassowaries, I hadn't seen dugong, hadn't eaten dugong. I got to do all of those things. The people were very welcoming in that way. They would cook it for you and give it to you to taste. There were some very strong elders there, and some very strong families who were fighting what was bringing the community down. I did leave after a particularly violent incident when there were a lot of people, they pay them very little, but in those days I think it was something like $1 an hour, but then they give you 6 weeks pay for Christmas and New Year because you're going on holidays. And so that meant you weren't allowed to bring alcohol on the mission, but people used to sneak it in. It meant that there was a lot of alcohol, and I had lots of people in the DTs, and the police had left. Everyone had left. And one of those families dropped someone at the hospital in the DTs, and basically what they said to me, he's frightening us. And I didn't have the experience to know what that meant. But he was psychotic, and he decided that I was the devil, and he tried to strangle me with the phone cord. And one of the young girls, I employed the young girls to work in the hospital to cook and clean, and got on very, very well with them. So one of them came to my rescue and knocked him out with a frying pan. So, there's a lot of violence. And so I left. I actually left practically overnight because it was out of control for that period of time.
I was in a village called Bonios, small village in the mountain. And there were two girls living up on the hills in a hut, renting a house, a sort of little shack. And they left the country. And I became friends with them in the village when they came down to the market and saw me. And they said, Dino, you want to rent our house? We're leaving the country. I said, oh yeah, I'll rent that little shack up there. And then they said, but we have a business going. You want to take that over? I said, what is it? They said, once a month a guy comes from Colombia with a big bag of marijuana and bring us this marijuana and we sell that. You want to take it on? I said, yeah, take it on. I said, no problem. And so that's it was happening. And I had people coming and knock on my door when I rented that house up there. We heard about you, that you have some good pot to sell. People I not even knew. They traveled from Peru up to Ecuador, and I had to be careful, So I made packets of sort of ounce packets and sell them. It's just people, hippies, travelers, I sold to them, yeah. But I had also a little girlfriend in the village down, a local girl, and she was a bruja. You know what a bruja is? The brujas are, a bruja is a woman, a brujo is a man. They sort of like witchcraft, and really, they're pretty powerful people. And like fortune telling and really, but much, much more serious. That was my girlfriend. And then a time came up when there was a big festival in Peru, the Sun Festival in Peru, that comes up every sort of 5 or 6 years. And I said to my girlfriend, she was working in a restaurant in the village down, and I said to her, I'm going to Peru to the Sun Festival. And she said, I come with you. I said, no, I go alone. She went to the police that I was selling marijuana to people. I was down in the village, had some food in a cantina, and police came in with a little paper and they said, are you Mr. Sofia? Si, senor. Vámonos, let's go. She went to the police and said, I'm selling marijuana, which was true. So but the village where I lived was too small. There was no jail there. They took me in a car to Ambato. There was a bigger city. This is all in Ecuador I'm talking about. There was a jail. I remember I came into the jail. There was a bunch of police sitting and watching soccer on TV. I had to wait till the bloody match is finished. And then they said, what's wrong with this guy? So they said, oh, we're selling marijuana. So I had to wait till the match was finished. And then they took care of me. So because my girlfriend went to the police and said I was selling, which was true, just to the traveller. I done a service to the tourist trade, not the local people, just hippies and travellers who come to it. And yeah, and so I was sentenced for 5 years. The room they put me in was it's like a church hall, this big, and a little light in the ceiling, and the big door open, and I was in there. They're not cells like in a prison. It's just one big room like a church, and the people were sitting there on the wall, and the prisoners sitting on that wall. And I came in there. Fuck, man. I was about the only Westerner in there. There was all local people in there, from small crime to murder. And then one guy was walking up and down in the middle, up and down. And I didn't feel very good. I was just sitting on the wall with some of the prisoners. And so he attacked me eventually. And I was fighting me. That's my souvenir from the prison with the knife. There's a gang in there. Some of this bunch of prisoners, one is sort of the boss in there. And every time a new prisoner comes into this big room, they fight him and check if he got some money on him or jewelry or tobacco or whatever. And this guy was tried that to do to me. And I was calling Guardia, yeah. Open the door. Eventually the door opened. We had to line up all on the wall. And it was about 10 or 11 at night by that time. And I had to point out who the guy was. I was bleeding bloody like hell. Yeah. But the guy I was fighting with, he had a knife and he cut me. But I eventually picked him up in the corner. There's a big 44-gallon drum. That's where you piss in there, the prisoners. There's no toilet, it's just piss in there. And I put him upside down in there. But then eventually the door opened and the police came in. I had to go back to the thing. That was about 12 o'clock, midnight or 1 in the morning when all this thing was finished. We had to go all back again. The locals were sitting around me. Some of the prisoners came and protected me. So the guy was fighting me didn't come and do more harm to me. But eventually the door opened and I had to go to the hospital and stitch that up. But yeah, I was 5 years sentenced. The people I lived in the village where I was arrested with my girlfriend up there, they collected money. They wanted to buy dope. I said, where's the guy who sells them? Oh, he's in prison. They collected money amongst the other hippies. They came with a piece of paper to the police station in Nambucca, where the prison was, and $1,000 US. They collected that much, and I was out to go.
I was asked some years ago to come up here by a friend to see an exhibition at the Regional Gallery, and I hadn't been to Maitland before, but the way people from Newcastle spoke about it, I just assumed it was in the middle of nowhere and that I'd have to like pack supplies to get there or something. So I was really surprised when it was only a half an hour drive. And then the other big surprise was turning off the highway and driving along the high street and seeing the art gallery and just being, hello.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Did I interrupt your train of thought?
No, it's cool. It's all good.
Is that more tea? It's more tea, Mr. Brandon.
It's fantastic. Tea.
Right. It's always time for more tea. There is indeed, sir. There is indeed. We moved back about a year ago and I was still going to Sydney to kind of check on the businesses and make sure it was all running okay, but all the while wondering what on earth I was going to do because I could feel myself separating from that workplace, and then wondering about restaurants and who I'd like to work with, and wondering about bars and pubs, and there was a great pub for sale that I thought about buying and running. And then Anthony Saroff, who is a man about town. The Saroffs have been in the area for a really long time, and I knew Anthony really well growing up. He said that this place was coming up for tender, and I actually got in really early and walked into the room. And as soon as I got into this room, I think everyone has an immediate response to it. It's magical. Maybe it even has magical powers, I think. That's what I always say. I hope.
Our children were still young enough to have sort of a change in bringing, living in a city to living in the country, and we thought that would be a good thing to introduce them to nature and to living outside a big city and the rat race. So we became biodynamic farmers, and when the children grew up and left home, we moved to Maitland.
Now, what was I talking about? I came into Maitland and I was driving along the high street and I saw the art gallery, and I remember being quite stunned. It was as if this building had been teleported in from somewhere like New York, and I got quite confused because I just really wasn't expecting that. So I took the first turn and it was the wrong turn. I turned down Sun Street where I should have gone down James, and I just parked the car for a second there and sort of sat there in the middle of Sun Street trying to process what I'd just seen. So my first impression was just this amazing piece of architecture.
Today we're in Cathedral Street, so named because behind me here is the beautiful St John's Pro Cathedral, the Catholic church in Maitland. Built in about 1847, it served as the main centre of worship for the Catholic religion in Maitland. Here we are at the beginning of Cathedral Street, just down from St John's at the other end. This is the more recently built area of the Catholic Church. This is what they call the Pro Cathedral, and served for many years as the main cathedral for the Catholic faith. Here we are at Ken Tubman Drive. This is a new precinct. We have the Methodist Church, we're on the side of it. Here, across the road is All Saints High School, and this road, Ken Tubman Drive, is all new. But behind me, as you can see, is a magnificent CBC Bank, or it used to be. It's now a wedding reception venue, but it's one of the major buildings in Maitland. What a magnificent edifice it is to the builders and to the banking industry.
When I was 17, I got called the defender of the derelict by a local newspaper editor. So I adopted that title and have worn it proudly ever since. Architecture is a big part of who I am, what I do, and heritage architecture as well. So I've saved many buildings and restored a few, and here I am in this heritage building here.
I mean, what's good architecture? And there isn't much of it around this town, I can tell you. But, I mean, if you go out to Gilston Heights or Rutherford or something and you see all the hundreds of project homes, and they're crap. They're crap architecture. And we're still producing them in their hundreds. And you sort of think, can't we do better than this? I mean, drive through Gilston Heights now and have a look at the houses with black roofs. Black roofs, and we've just been getting 40-degree temperatures. I can only imagine that under that they've got blankets of insulation, and then under that they've got an air conditioner going hammer and tongs.
I don't think in 100 years' time people are going to come and see the buildings we're building now. I don't even think they're going to be around in 100 years' time. There's so much heritage, like even today in Maitland, that we lose. And even in Newcastle, like we're losing. The streetscapes are changing at an enormous rate. The suburbs are changing, and we're getting all these modern buildings and all that, you know. And the thing is, we're getting modern buildings for the sake of modern buildings. It's not even something that people in 100 years' time are going to come and have a look at. Whereas anything that's heritage now is going to be very revered in 100 to 200 years' time, because it's that much older, it's that much rarer, it's that much more special. And I think if we don't start capitalising on that cultural tourism of the future now, then we are going to lose it.
I mean, locals would know of Walker Waterworks that is here in Maitland. That had 3 massive steam engines in it and pumps, which when they decommissioned it, they wrecked them. And in fact, they blew up the fly wheels inside the building, and they were 35 feet across. What's that? More than 10 metres across. Massive cast iron flywheels made in England, blew them up inside the building and then hauled them out presumably and chucked them away.
I was involved in trying to save the fig trees in Newcastle. There were 14 beautiful fig trees outside the art gallery and in Civic Park, near Civic Park. And I really enjoyed being involved in that. And I thought about marrying one of the trees. And so I did my first bit of street theatre, I guess, and it gave me, I don't know, I had a sense of purpose. I enjoyed the sense of belonging and the quirkiness of marrying something, even if it was a tree, was really fun. And I wish I had my vows here that I could read them, but I haven't. Can I sing the song, one of the songs? Oh, lemon fig, the heights are calling, from tree to tree and down the island side. Your beauty vast, your strength, it is magnificent. Oh, lemon fig, we love you so. Don't chop them down, for they were made for growing. Don't chop them down, for they are in their prime. Don't chop them down, oh, these the icons of our town. don't chop them down. You know it is a crime. That's all I remember of the whole thing. But there was quite a parade of things happening around the figs, and it was great to be part of that. Unfortunately, we won in council. We won to preserve the figs, and then it was retracted with more goings on that I didn't understand. And anyway, that episode, even without full understanding, taught me that no matter how much effort you put into doing something, sometimes you just can't win. And I was a bit upset about that, and I realised how easily things can be turned around without you realising it. Anyway, those figs have gone, and interestingly enough, it was on the proviso they planted new figs in their place. Beats me why, because they were healthy figs, but anyway, those new figs are growing, and I'll grow to like them, I'm sure.
I met a group of other people who were starting a slow food group here in the Hunter, and I joined. And about 10 years ago, I became the leader of this group, and been a leader for a very long time. Time to hand it over. But in that time, of course, we've helped to bring the idea of biodiversity into the communities that we work with here in the Hunter Valley. And we discovered, about 3 years ago that in 2016, that after the floods in Maitland, that one of our farmers was about to plough his entire 40 tonnes of pumpkin into the ground because he couldn't sell it, or the Sydney markets wanted them washed and polished and were offering 25 cents a kilo for it. The group, we were looking at that time at food waste as part of, at the farm gate, as being an issue, in terms of access to food, and we decided to set up a pop-up stall here in the centre of town in Maitland, in the levee, and I guess the rest is history.
We have so much happening now in Maitland. I see our emerging arts, theatre, all those communities as startups. I see them all leveraging off each other. And I see, when I did live in Cairns, I guess it's centred around tourism. I think there were 55,000 jobs out of tourism. And I think Maitland's going to be an amazing weekend destination for people to come here and enjoy all those spaces, meet all those people. So that's a bit of the vision, and I'm enjoying it. I'm really enjoying being the first female mayor of Maitland.
Work of all the poets who have been part of this programme. There's been 10 poets who have gone through the programme since last May, and also there's been 8 cafes involved. So a big thank you to the poets and the cafe owners for being liberal-minded enough to entertain the idea of having a poet in residence. And the programme's been getting a very good reaction from the public, and it's wonderful to see you all here tonight.
Those hands of yours, matured yet firm and formed from careful practiced art and years of discipline, and a well-trained eye to spy beauty that lies below my hard exterior and waits within.
Sassy sexual violins turn to witchcraft as cellos boom, mood-switching incense. Ignore all nonsense in your sexual palace. Should I offer myself? We all get hurt by love.
They say I spent wildly, willfully extravagant, that I drained the country of its wealth, left mud on the treasury floor in place of coin.
Well, my year as a fairy tale began late in 2016 when I was nearing the end of my PhD. And the University of Newcastle got a bunch of us together in a room and said, look, You've spent all these years doing research. How about you think of a way you can either use it to serve your communities or make some money, so commercialise your research or link it to community service in some way. And we had 2 days for this workshop, and on the first day we had to brainstorm ways we could kind of like do something with our research. And on the second day we had to pitch our best idea to a panel. And so I'd had this crazy idea that I was going to dress as Marie Antoinette for a year, 24/7, and go about my everyday life in Maitland and use it to promote Maitland as a creative city, and also use it to lobby for the construction of a museum in central Maitland. And so I got up on the second day and I dressed as conservatively as I could. You know, I really tried to look as straight and as middle class as I possibly could. And I just pitched this ridiculously stupid idea. And to my astonishment, they decided to fund it. So that kicked it off. And then it's one of those situations, it's like high-level peer group pressure. If you've told a certain number of people you're going to do something, even if it's whack job stupid, you feel like you have to come through. So in early 2017, I launched a possible crowdfunding campaign, and that was able to finance the next phase of the project, which was trying to get some costumes and some documentation of it as well. And then it's just kicked along quite nicely since then. So it's had a lot of press coverage. We've had a lot of local press coverage and a bit of national and international as well, which is quite nice. So I remember when I started it, I really didn't want to leave the house, and I felt quite self-conscious because I'm not a shy person by any stretch of the imagination, but I am quite reserved. So it takes a while to adjust to that. But then after a while, it's amazing how quickly it becomes a normal paradigm. It's quite entertaining, actually. I think it works best when it is quite casual. There's just that tension between a person doing quite mundane activities and being dressed up like this. I mean, the whole point of this performance is that it disrupts everything. And so it's like old-fashioned technology here. It's like scratching the album, you know, the little jump on the turntable where it kind of suddenly blips. So it's supposed to mess with people's perceptions of reality a little bit. Old-fashioned technology here. It's like scratching the album, you know, the little jump on the turntable where it kind of suddenly comes through. So it's supposed in early 2017, I launched a possible crowdfunding campaign, and that was able to finance the next phase of the project, and that's going to cost regional area representation. And it happens at multiple levels. And it's just completely underestimates the member community that's up to with the various. One of the things fantastic writer Danielle Wood in Hobart, and I got this really funny email from her beforehand saying, "I'm not sure what to wear."
But I just want to make a ton of money by selling X. It was all about, this is a social problem, this is a challenge that we're facing, let's do something to sort it.
So what do you think it is about, like, sort of the theatre and plays is the reason why you've sort of interested and continue being interested for so long?
Well, the first play I ever had anything to do with was 1961, and I've probably been involved in something. I lost count at about 200 shows, and that was a decade ago, more than that. So I think I can speak with some background in amateur theatre, and that's quite different from professional. In fact, I'd argue they're two different animals. I mean, amateur theatre's looked down on, except most professionals have done some, but it's looked down on as crude, you know, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, having fun on stage. And there's some truth in that, but I never took that view. I took it as a serious art form. So I think good plays have something valuable to say to people. I'd put it this way, if I go to a play and I come out thinking about it, and particularly if I'm still thinking about it the next morning, I regard that as a play that's done it for me. If I come to get to the front door and I think, oh, that was nice, where have I put the car keys? And oh God, I've forgotten where I parked the car.
It hasn't done it for me. And I mean, even if I said to people, tell me the 5 best plays you've ever seen, most of them can't get to 3. And if you say, well, what was good about them? And I mean, one ridiculous answer I got at the repertory, I said to somebody, I heard them say, oh, that's a good play. And I said, why? And they said, oh, because there's a part in it for me. And I thought, that is so shallow, it's almost insulting. But some play about, somebody having it off with their secretary and running around half naked and slamming doors and all that. I mean, yes, there are people who'd say that's entertaining, and I don't wish to take that from them, but it's got nothing to tick your brain over. I mean, you can have nothing between your ears and you might still so enjoy it. But it comes back, what is good architecture? What is good painting? What's good theatre? What's a good film? I mean, somebody the other day said, oh, I went and saw such and such. Oh, it was a good film. Why was it good? Good acting. Well, you'd hope so. But what about the content? I suppose I go to a film for the content. I'd even be prepared to put up with, although I don't see why I should, with lesser acting if the content was good. In a way, that's what amateur theatre is. It's untrained people doing plays, sometimes very well, sometimes not very well, because they haven't had professional training. They haven't done their 3 years or whatever it is at NIDA and been guided by experienced professionals. They're doing it because they love it.
Gather rosebuds as you may, while time is still a-flying. Gather rosebuds as you may, while time is still a-flying. Oh, the flower that blooms today, tomorrow will be dying. That fat old sun, the higher he's a-getting. Oh, that lucky old sun, the higher he's a-getting. Well, the further that he goes, the nearer he's to setting. Well, life is best when young, when juices are a-flowing. Yeah, life is best when young, when juices are a-flowing. Well, getting old's not much fun when your get-up's gone or going. The moving finger rise and having writ moves on, and all your words were array, and all your and all your thoughts were a razor, were not a single goddamn one. So do not hesitate, and while you can go marry, don't procrastinate while you can make merry. Or you might find if you wait, forever you have tarried.
Probably one more question. What's your plans for the future? Yeah. Oh, you know, this will be revealing, but I don't think I've ever been under so much pressure or been more stressed and riddled by anxiety in my whole life. And I was really excited by the idea of doing this. But it's challenging on so many levels, and those challenges have like exceeded what my expectations were. And I really hope that I can get in control of that, and that this can be, that I can find the joy in this process of like building a new space for people to socialize and eat, and because at the moment I feel out of control. Like coming back to this part of the world was all about slowing my life down and creating space to be happy and or be creative, to do those things, and I just I am bowing heavily under the pressure. So I really hope I can figure that out, because otherwise it's not worth it.
I didn't sort of work it out that I could get my super at 60 and all that. I didn't keep in one job for a long time. So I need to work till I'm 67 and get the pension. And I've got a good job at the moment, which is flexible, so I can get away. I work casually, and even though it's regular casual, I can take some time off when I want, and I like that. So I'm quite content with my work at the moment. And actually I'm quite content with living here at the moment too.
Brandon, you forget when you get old things. Don't get old. And I told my doctor I want to live till 120. Jesus. Because I'm made in Switzerland. That's good quality. Swiss made. Well, in 14 years I'm 100, Brendan. You can make another movie when I'm 100. Yeah. You have a big glass of wine and you make another movie whenever.
Absolutely. This is the old op shop. Look, there's two op shops up there. We just
Try and visualise High Street with many of these tall buildings. Where the camera is, at Kappa's store, it was 4 stories, and they were famous for ironmongery. Hardware ironmongery, farming equipment. You could buy every single thing you needed. Cart wheels, horseshoes, everything was available here. 4 stories high, electric lifts. It was an amazing building and trading centre for High Street, Maitland. Sadly, it was burnt down in the early 1970s, and today it's an empty block of ground. Thank you. Oh no, just a bit of fun. Just a mate's son, he likes playing with the camera. So, I like a bit of history, so we're just having a bit of fun, you know. Yeah. I don't know, if you talk to him nicely, he might sell you a copy. He might give you a copy.